My name is Jillian Reed. I'm 30, and I design clothes for a living. This morning, sunlight slid across my kitchen's marble, hit a small brass tray, and lit up the four things I own outright: two keys, a deed, and a sentence that changed everything. I typed it once, looked at the glass walls that used to be a wish, and pressed send. Get off my property. If you've ever been told your life will be a rental, dreams month to month, hopes due on the first, you'll understand why those words felt like air after a long dive. A few years back, I was cutting patterns on a wobbly table in a studio apartment, counting quarters for thread. Last year, a bank manager used a different word for what I do: revenue. He said it the way people say your name when they finally pronounce it right. I didn't shout that moment to anyone. I folded it, put it in a drawer, and kept working. I'm not a screamer. I stitch. I stack proof. I let numbers say what mouths won't. Somewhere along the way, the late nights, the quiet launches, the boxes that left my hallway and came back as receipts, those built a hallway like this one, wide and echoing, where the floors don't creak when you walk because the wood is new and the nails are sure. It's funny how a house can be both shelter and sentence. This one says I was here and I paid attention. There's a story behind why I sent that text and why my hands didn't shake when I locked the door afterward. It didn't start in this kitchen. It started at a table I didn't own, under a ceiling where the lights were always a little too bright, with voices that loved me loudest when I was the quietest. If you've sat at a table like that, you already know the taste of a smile you keep for later. Before I go on, tell me something. Where are you watching from right now? Your city, your country? Drop it in the comments so I can picture the room you're in as I tell you the rest. Because what happened next took place in a different room, with different light, and it turned 4 words into a line I wouldn't cross again. The night it started turning, I pulled into my parents' driveway in North Hills and sat for a breath, watching porch lights blink on down the block like a row of little verdicts. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken and lemon polish. Coats piled on the entry bench. Voices floated from the dining room. Neighbors, 2 colleagues from my brother's law firm, the usual Sunday audience. I kissed my mother's cheek, hugged my dad, nodded to the guests. My brother raised a glass from the head of the table as if I were late to a meeting he was running. I took the open chair halfway down, the one that keeps you in the conversation but out of the spotlight. Plates passed, stories circled. Logan was on a roll. New client, new car, something about a rooftop cocktail that had everyone smiling at the right places. Between the salad and the cornbread, I said it simply, the way you say the weather is changing. I've been looking at houses. Forks paused. A neighbor set her water down too carefully. My mother's smile tightened. It never reached her eyes when she was surprised. "Sweetheart," she said, a hand on my wrist. "Aim appropriately. These homes aren't for everyone." My father cleared his throat, voice dropping into his budget tone. "Be practical, Jillian. It's a lot to take on. Talk to your brother. He understands real estate." Logan leaned back, comfortable as a cat in a warm window. "She'll always rent her dreams," he said, and the 2 firm friends gave the soft laughter people use when they're not sure if it's a joke but want to be on the right side of it. I buttered a roll I didn't want. "I appreciate the concern," I said, and let the sentence end there. The table moved on, as tables do when someone steers it. Logan picked up a story about a closing argument. My mother ladled gravy with the calm of a nurse. My father asked a neighbor about property taxes. I watched the light fixture tremble slightly when a truck went by, the crystals catching it and sprinkling it back on the white plates. Every time someone said practical, a little more room disappeared around me. Dessert came, pecan pie, my mother's specialty, and I took the thinnest slice. I felt their certainty wrap the room like plastic. I smiled where I was supposed to. I gathered my coat when it was polite. At the door, my father squeezed my shoulder, the way coaches do when the game is already decided. "Drive safe," he said. "I will," I told him, and meant something else. Back at my apartment, The noise from dinner thinned to the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the wall clock. I set my bag down, rolled out the pattern paper, and went back to what I do when rooms get small. I work. Nights stacked on nights. Fabric bolts leaned like books against the wall. The sewing machine gave its steady, ordinary mercy. I cut, stitched, steamed, packed. Labels printed with my name slid out warm and chemical sweet. And I pressed them into collars like a modest signature, present, not loud. Orders started as favors, then as experiments, then as recurring names on a spreadsheet. A teacher in Charlotte, a florist in Austin, a news anchor who wore one of my jackets on a Tuesday and tagged it without asking for anything free. I learned the rhythm of drops and restocks, of choosing a color because it photographs as faithfully as it wears. I learned the sound tape makes when success is quiet, that ripping pull over cardboard when a box is sealed and ready to leave. Daniel, everyone calls him D, knew numbers the way I know grain lines. He worked days in marketing, nights at my kitchen table, eyes bright over coffee that went cold because the charts didn't. He built the ads, tuned the audiences, watched what bit and what bored. Open rates up. Return customers up. Don't explain it to anyone, he said, and I didn't. We kept our ledger private and our execution public. Influencers came by accident, then on purpose. Boutiques asked for wholesale, then reorders. A buyer in Chicago said clean, American, wearable, and sent a contract that read like fresh air. I opened a business account and stopped paying for fabric with the same card that paid for electricity. The bank manager leaned in, curious, then respectful. Cash flow, working capital, words I wore like a new, well-fitting coat. I kept a simple rule. If a piece couldn't justify its own repeat, it didn't get one. That rule left me room to breathe and to scale without breaking the stitch. My parents called sometimes. I sent photos of the cat or the skyline. When my mother asked if I'd thought about a backup plan, I said I had one, seasonality. It made her happy, and it was true. I didn't post victories to prove them. I logged them, shipped them, and moved on. There's a kind of quiet that isn't hiding, it's building. By the time the lease came up for renewal, the boxes were moving faster than I could stack them, and the hallway felt smaller than the life that paid for it. I didn't say a word. I just kept laying out patterns until the floor told me what the next size should be. When my lease renewal hit the mailbox, I didn't sign it. I set it on the counter beside a stack of shipping labels and drove to a showing in North Hills. The house sat back from the street behind clean landscaping and a quiet line of glass. No drama, no angles pretending to be something else. Just light. And the kind of stillness you get when things are well made. The agent met me at the walk. Floor-to-ceiling windows, steel frame, white oak throughout, he said, keys ready. Inside, he kept talking. Our values, appliance packages, zoning, useful words. I heard other ones. Proof, room, future. The living room opened like a held breath. The kitchen's island was wide enough to lay out a whole collection and still eat dinner. Off the hall, a small office with a door that shut smooth and true. I pressed the latch twice. It didn't rattle. We walked the perimeter. The primary bedroom took the morning light. The deck caught the evening. Storage sat where you needed it, not where some plan said it should go. I stood at the glass and looked back at the street, at the way the neighborhood kept its voice low even on a weekday. The agent asked if I had questions. I did, but not for him. Back in the car, I called D. He asked for the address, pulled comps while I listened to the engine tick. Numbers work, he said. You can do this without denting the operating cash if we time the next drop right. I called my banker next. He remembered me, remembered the steady deposits and the few withdrawals. We went through options like chess pieces, keep liquidity, move it, lock rate, no financing. Each move had a cost and a quiet. I chose the one that ended the conversation fastest. That evening, I met Linda at a diner that still uses real sugar dispensers. I slid the brochure across the table. "Don't argue with anybody," she said, smiling. "Premier, let the house speak." I made the offer before the coffee cooled. We penciled in inspection, appraisal, a closing date that fit my calendar and no one else's. I kept my voice even with everyone I spoke to: agent, bank, lawyer. I kept my mouth shut with everyone else. When the offer was accepted, I walked my block in the dark and counted the steps home. I wasn't purchasing square footage. I was purchasing silence and a door that would close when I asked it to. Closing day was a clean signature and a quiet set of keys. No balloons, no speech. I slipped the ring into my pocket and walked the rooms alone, listening for anything loose. The doors caught, the latches answered, the house held still. It was ready to be lived, not performed. I decided to make it both. I called Patricia, a designer who understands how space can speak without shouting. She walked the perimeter with a small notebook and a sharper eye. "You're minimal, but not cold," she said. "Power, but soft landings." We started in the entry, a console that doesn't beg, a mirror that returns a person, not a pose. In the living room, we chose a deep velvet sofa, quiet strength, and two chairs that turn easily toward conversation. A rug large enough to anchor, not float, lines clean, edges eased. The kitchen took a stone island with honest veining, wide enough for work and supper. Hardware you feel once and then forget because it always behaves. Over the dining area, a single statement light, no crystals, just form and clarity, hung at a height that favors faces. We tuned sightlines like an instrument, from the staircase to the room, from the room to the glass, from the glass to the trees. Nothing accidental. The office got built-ins measured to the inch of what I actually keep. Ledgers, lookbooks, a box of old labels that still smell like ink. Deliveries came in a patient parade. Patricia's team taped pads on door frames. No wall took a bruise. Linda arrived with measuring tape and a grin, setting out glassware and proofing the flow like a stage manager. "Walk it," she said. And I did. Door to greeting, greeting to coat, coat to conversation, conversation to food, food to an easy exit for anyone who needed one. We placed a bar in the corner where people find it without crowding the talk. Then the part that mattered most, the staircase. We kept it clean, no art to compete, no console to catch the eye, just light pooling at the landing, a natural pause that brings a room to attention without a raised voice. "This," Patricia said, "is your podium." When the last felt pad was pressed under the last chair, I opened my laptop and drafted a single line: "Join me to celebrate my new home." The guest list was short and deliberate. Friends who showed up when the boxes were brown, a few industry people who respected hands-on work, and my family. No disclaimers, no asterisks. The invitations went out in the afternoon. I ordered catering that tastes like intention, small plates, clean flavors, and a playlist that stays beneath conversation. By dusk, the house was set. It didn't brag. It simply stood ready to say what needed saying, and nothing more. Guests began arriving just before dusk, their footsteps soft on the new walk, their voices lowering as they crossed the threshold. The house did its job. Light skimmed the oak. Glass held the last of the day. Jazz hummed low enough to keep room for words. The caterers moved like they'd rehearsed here for weeks. Small plates, clean flavors, nothing fussy. Linda checked the flow with a nod. Dee stood by the bar, watching the room like a scoreboard only he could read. My parents came in with the careful faces they save for other people's homes. My mother glanced for a coat rack and found it. My father took in the ceiling height, that reflexive scan he does when he wants to know who paid. My brother arrived last, voice first, suit sharp, 2 colleagues in tow. He shook a hand, said a name, smiled at a mirror, then at himself in it. Beautiful, my mother said, and let it hang like a compliment that expects an owner to appear. Who's hosting? My father asked, casual as a survey. Someone doing very well, my brother added, half grin settled where it always does. I let the assumption breathe. I walked them through the living room without labeling anything. Guests mingled. The house kept its voice low. People found the bar, found the food, found each other. A neighbor admired the staircase and stepped aside from it without knowing why. I let the room warm until the warmth became attention. Then I climbed to the landing and tapped a glass once. The sound carried. Conversations placed themselves on pause. Faces turned, not in alarm, just in agreement. The light gathered there, where we planned it to, and gave me a clear line to the door, the table, the people I invited on purpose. Thank you for coming, I said, for being here to celebrate my new home. A breath moved across the room. My mother's glass tilted. My father's jaw remembered the set it keeps for verdicts he doesn't like. My brother's smile loosened and went looking for somewhere else to sit. This isn't leased, I went on. Not borrowed, purchased, 3 million, paid in full. No echo. The walls didn't need to repeat it, they were already saying it. Someone near the bar exhaled. A friend touched my elbow and stepped back, giving the space back to me. My parents looked for a script they didn't have. My brother cleared his throat, then didn't. They asked a few questions that weren't questions. How? Since when? With who? I answered what mattered. With work. Then I came down the steps, handed my mother a fresh napkin, guided my father toward the framed view he'd noticed, and sent a plate to my brother's friends so they'd have something to do with their hands. The room resumed. Laughter returned at a lower volume. The house kept standing, saying the only thing I wanted said. 2 weeks after the housewarming, the doorbell rang at noon while the sun laid a bright rectangle across the entry rug. I was in the office sorting invoices, the comfortable busy of a normal day. The bell went again, longer this time. I wiped my hands, walked to the door, and checked the camera. My parents stood on the porch, shoulders close, my brother behind them, eyes fixed somewhere past the glass. I opened the door enough for air and manners. My mother spoke first. "Jillian, we need to talk," she said, voice too quick. My father looked past me into the house like a man reading a menu he can't afford. Logan stared at the floorboards, one hand still in his suit pocket. "What is it?" I asked. My father cleared his throat. "Your brother made an investment, a bridge round. It was supposed to be short and safe." He paused, the old confidence failing its cue. "It isn't." My mother reached for my hand and stopped when she noticed she was reaching. "We backed him," she said. "It's complicated, but the point is, things are tight, for a while." She tried to smile. "You're doing well. Maybe you could help us through the month, just to get past this part." Logan finally looked up. The charm he wears to work was missing. "It went sideways," he said. "Market timing. We'll recover. I just need a little runway." Behind them, a neighbor walked a dog and didn't look over. The house stayed quiet, the kind that doesn't apologize. I let the pause land where it should have landed years ago. "I'm sorry you're in a bad spot," I said. "Truly." I kept my voice even. "But no." My mother blinked. "We're family." "We are," I said. "And for years, family meant I stayed small so you could stay comfortable. I won't do that now." My father tried a softer line. "It would be alone." "We both know it wouldn't," I said. Logan took a half step forward. "Jill." I didn't let him finish. I opened the door as far as the hinge allowed and met each set of eyes in turn. The air between us felt as clean and bright as the glass behind me. "Get off my property," I said. No raised voice, no echo, just the words and the hinge and the quiet click that followed. I turned the deadbolt and stood for a moment with my hand on the cool metal. The house held steady. Outside, Footsteps moved away, then down the walk, then into the street where the day kept going without us. The afternoon after I closed the door, the house exhaled. Sun slid across the island and stopped on the brass tray where the keys lived. I brewed coffee, answered vendor emails, signed off on a production run, and watched the dashboard tick up in quiet increments that don't brag. Orders confirmed, shipments scanned, returns minimal because the fit was honest. Dee texted a screenshot of the week's curve with a single word, steady. Linda sent a photo of the staircase at dusk. Podium doing its job, she wrote. Word drifted through North Hills the way it always does, low and certain. The neighbor with the spaniel waved with a little extra respect. A buyer from Miami called to expand their order. A magazine asked for a pull sheet instead of a pitch. I kept the same rule I'd used in the apartment. Do the work, let the work talk. The house helped. Mornings in the office, the door clicked shut and stayed shut. Afternoons, the light moved from wall to wall like a clock without numbers. Evenings, I cooked something simple and ate standing up because sometimes a chair feels like a speech you don't need to give. My parents' calls thinned into occasional texts, weather, a photo from a distant cousin's wedding, a question that read like an apology without the word. I answered kindly and briefly. Logan sent one line, I get it. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because the sentence was complete. Around town, the old story, lawyer son, dreamy daughter, quietly retired itself. People adjusted. They usually do when numbers settle what opinions couldn't. The next drop sold out in hours. We restocked once and let the rest go. I hired 2 seamstresses who sew better than I do when I'm tired. I gave them the good chairs and a schedule that respects hands. We put a small plaque in the workroom with 3 lines. Fit is kindness. Quality is quiet. Proof beats permission. No one posed with it. We just followed it. Some nights I stand at the landing and look down at the room where I said what needed saying. There's no echo now, just the soft hum of a home doing what homes do when they're chosen, not borrowed. If any part of this sounds like your life, if you've ever had to measure your worth at someone else's table, tell me where you're watching from and the moment you chose proof over permission. I'll picture your room as clearly as I picture mine.